Welcome to the Chronic Health Collective. Your fresh start starts here. We're gathered powerful coaches and experts to help you reclaim your energy, heal from the inside out, and step into a life that feels vibrant, aligned, and deeply fulfilling. If you're ready for better health, stronger relationships, and of course, more purpose, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Andy Nam, and joining me today is Jessica Hammock and Kelly Fox. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
We are so excited for you to join us today on our panel. And this month we're actually exploring the themes of bloom, joy, and expansion. The idea that it is a celebration of vitality, creativity, and personal evolution. So, today on the panel, we're going to discuss how each of us might view each of those topics, from the idea of blooming to having joy, and what expansiveness comes from in each of our fields, because we each approach it so differently. So I would love, when you think of the word bloom, what does that mean to you each personally?
Wow, Kelly, you want to go first?
Just put me out there, huh? Um, yeah, I can go. I mean, we focus on fear, right?
Mhm.
So, bloom, I think anytime we bloom, anytime we grow, our fear kind of gets a little louder and freaks out, right? Because we're stepping out of our comfort zone, we're getting into that unknown area where maybe doing things we haven't done before, it feels unsafe. And so our fear gets a little louder, gets in our face a little bit more. And so just being aware of when your fear does speak up a little bit more, when things do seem to be a little bit more challenging to get going, it's just your fear letting you know that you're growing. It's just a signal to know, hey, you're growing, you're doing something new. It's not a reason to stop, and it's just an awareness of, hey, I'm growing.
I love that. I don't know how to follow that there, Kelly. I guess for me as a longevity coach, when I think of blooming, is you know when I'm working with people any one time, it's about being born again, right? Like like a lot of people think it's already too late to do this. It's like I'm too old for this, and I really don't believe in that. I honestly believe that our bodies have the ability to reset itself and to basically start a new life each time, right? When we do the reset, right? So when I'm looking at a bloom in a situation when we're blooming, it's sort of like we're shedding off the old skin, almost like a
Mhm.
caterpillar, and coming blooming out almost like a butterfly, in which case with renewed health, renewed vigor and stuff like that. But we have to choose to want to bloom. We don't want to be staying in the dirt, but we really want to just pop that that little leaf out, get your environment in, and just embrace the life that we are meant to be.
I love that. I think, from my perspective, when I think of blooming, I think that there's a lot of different types of plants and flowers and trees and things that bloom in the springtime. But there's this level of vulnerability that people are willing to try when they're coming from a place of healing trauma and other things. And that level of vulnerability comes out in sometimes little exposures. When you think of like a new bud
Hmm.
appearing, it's a little exposure, something they tried where they didn't before. Doesn't mean internally that they still might not feel some disruption or a little bit of like nervousness about it, but they're willing to try something. And then I think there's this idea of like the full bloom, where it's like stepping out to do an action for themselves or for others, or in an environment that otherwise in the past would have felt maybe unsafe or kept them hidden or stuck in fear. But you see this different level of confidence that
Hmm.
comes across their features and saying, like, I'm showing up for myself, and it's a beautiful reflection of who I am, but it's also beautiful to the world around me. The world sees the bloom completely different than they would otherwise before the while this person is in process of healing. So I love that it's kind of brought each of us to this perspective of reflection of the clients that we work with and the different things. I'm curious, when we think about bloom, like, you know, um, Kelly, you mentioned like these fears. What are, when you think about fears, what are the most common you see? And and maybe is it different like in different age groups? And then also, what is like a tool that you really use with clients to help them transition, or the step that you use from your modality that transitions them from fear to essentially allowing that permission to bloom?
Yeah, I love this question. I think that the most common fear is that we're afraid that we're not enough
Mm,
of whatever that enough is. We're not enough. We're not smart enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not
Mhm.
capable enough. Whatever that enough is, that is the most common fear. That we're lacking somehow, and we have like either no power, no control over, you know, stepping over that gap and being enough.
mhm,
Um, and I think that one of the basic easy one of the easy basic well, it's easy in to explain, not necessarily easy in practice, but
Mhm.
is acknowledgments.
mhm,
It's
Mhm.
to acknowledge something that you have done, a step you have taken, a shift you have created, a perception that's changed. It can be itty bitty, it can be big, it doesn't matter, but acknowledging those every day. And you can do them in the moment, or you can reflect at night or in the morning. And we encourage people to write down at least five. And
wow.
there are days where
Mhm.
I'll sit there and I will rack my brain to try to think of five things I can acknowledge myself for. And there are some days where I could do way more than five.
Mhm,
And that I think that that's how life kind of is. Some days we might feel more productive, or some days, or in certain areas or times in our life, we're doing a lot more of things than in other times, because there's always time to rest, just like there's always time to get busy.
mhm,
So, um, to just have compassion for yourself, and really anchor in and give yourself credit for those things that you are doing, instead of focusing on all of the things you didn't cross off your list, or all the ways you're lacking in some way, all those ways you're not enough. Start focusing and writing down and anchoring in all the ways you are. So that is my one of my favorite tools to share with people, and one that I definitely use myself to help with my confidence and my ability to step out of my comfort zone and continue to take those steps to be able to bloom and continue to grow. And I think steps or tools or strategies, whatever you call them, are those things that you need to do on a daily basis
mhm,
to be
Mhm.
able to bloom. Just like a plant needs water and soil and sunlight, you need things every day as well. And so whatever those are, that you're consistently doing them so that you can bloom. Writing those acknowledgments daily, gratitudes, stepping outside, whatever those things are that support you in living that best life, that you're doing them regularly.
That's so good. So when you, Andy, when you think of like this idea of longevity, really, and working with those individuals that come in different stages, what practices do you see, or what awakening needs to come to an individual so that they can begin the transition to living life from a perspective of having a longevity, either mindset or practices? And what are maybe a simple strategy or tool that you start with individuals who are on that pathway?
First of all, thank you for reframing the question because I didn't know what I was going to say after Kelly's answer. Um, it's funny when you're talking about fear. I'm talking from a little bit of my experience, what I'm sharing, and what I see from a lot of people, and I'm sure Kelly sees this a lot too. Is there's so many of us that have fear of failure, right? We failed one time, and then we're just too too chicken to try over
Mhm.
again, right? And I think the biggest thing that people need to understand is there's no really failure isn't a real thing. To me, failure is mistakes you can learn from, lessons you can
Mhm.
learn from.
Yeah.
So if you've reframed that already, is like, well, rather than I failed this test, well, you learn something to do that test better next time,
Yeah.
right? That's what we learn from school, right? If you failed that
I've heard it say it's first attempt in learning.
Exactly, right? So a lot of times, and this is something, I learned too, is like, well, I failed. And most people, and I tell you, we've gone through several businesses over the years, and there are some that we failed really hard and, even went bankrupt. Most people say, I give up, that's done.
Mhm.
We pick up, well, what do we do wrong? What do we need to pivot? What do we learn from that? Right. And then you have to start all over. And I think, the tools that I like to share with people is I think people write too big of a goal, right? It's like if we're talking about longevity, someone's going to say, "Well, I want to have a fitness bod. I want to be super
Mhm.
strong." And but meanwhile, their health is really bad. Maybe they have problems sitting down or problem getting out of bed, right? I was like, well, your first celebration, and I like sort of like what Kelly says is we need to celebrate daily, right? Celebrate the little things, right? I think people have stopped celebrating the small things because they wait for the bigger celebrations. But
Mhm.
for me, it's like I had problems getting out of bed before, and I tell you, that day I swung my legs off the bed and stood up. Is oh my god, that was life changing. That's a celebration.
Yeah.
You all is like I do that every day, and he's crazy. But you have to understand there are some of us
Mhm.
that weren't able to do that, right? And then when you start building on these celebrations, these small celebrations, it's just like going up steps and then you build it up and then you set up a bigger goal. But I think too many people, they set up the goal so ridiculous, and I think ridiculous goals are important. You just have
Yeah.
to remember you have to do step by step. It's sort of like what eating the elephant. You have to take a chunk at a time, a bite at a time. Most people set that goal and they just want to do the jump like Superman into the moon. Unfortunately life doesn't work that way.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And I think that it is important to recognize your starting point.
Mhm.
And it's easy to compare yourself to others around you. There's a scene, and I want to say maybe it's in the Bambi movie. I don't remember what movie it's in. It's a Disney movie. And I can just hear the song. It's all these different types of flowers. And there's rain coming down, and they're singing drip, 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 little April showers. And I don't know why that keeps running through my head, but other than to think about this conversation of blooming for me and the clients that I see so often, when there is adversity in the environment, it becomes a really individual, almost a barrier to continuing the process to bloom. Because sometimes the little drops of April showers feel like I'm going to go back into this state where I was barely making it to survive. It opens up again all those fears, the fears that Kelly talked about, the fears that Andy talked about, and a whole bunch more fears of like, am I going to be stuck pre-bloom, which we know is from a plant standpoint is a seed in the ground where it's
Yeah.
dark and cold and heavy and it feels uncomfortable, right? But reminding people that in every environment, that even with adversities that do come, you can still stand in the work you've already done, that it doesn't detract from the work you've already done, which I think is so in alignment with what both of you were already saying. This idea that it's daily consistent practices, whether it's realignment to, acknowledging who you are and where you're going, acknowledgement of the little successes that you've had, acknowledgement of where you want to go, and not chewing so much of something so big. The end goal is important, but being able to recognize like, hey, I stood out in the April showers today and I wasn't completely destroyed, right? I've developed some resilience. And too many people I see get in this mindset of like, I can't believe I had this emotion again. I can't believe that I feel this way again. And I'm like, this is actually really healthy that you have an emotion coming up. again, because it means that you're ready actually for the next level of healing, the next level of awakening, the bigger bloom to show up in the world, because you were able to remain anchored in your nervous system. So really not looking at your where you are, and when adversity comes, not being stuck in like, oh, it came, celebrating the fact that you survived through it, that you rooted yourself and you stayed connected to who you are and the tools that you have. So I love that so much. We're going to go to a commercial break. And as soon as we come back, we're going to jump right into joy.
I love it. We'll be right back.
Have you encountered a situation or an event in your life that's caused you to feel stuck? You were on a journey to live your best life, but thoughts and feelings from the past keep showing up and has caused you to feel like you're not headed in the right direction or being the best version of you. Meet Jessica Hammock, trauma recovery and transformation coach. Not only will she teach you about emotional and mental health, she's here to help you unwind the treasure of who you are from the trauma of your past so that you can walk in the truth of your identity and break free from what is holding you back so you're able to nurture the best version of who you're meant to be. The time is now. Let's get started. Awesome. Well, we started out looking at bloom and some practical things of what that looks like, what might be in the way of your bloom. But as we transition into this idea of joy, and I really want to think about this from the lens of reclaiming joy without feeling guilt. Andy, I would love to hear from you, or like, what are some ways that you think clients can protect their energy around joy without feeling selfish about it? And what might be some things that are stealing joy from them in that pathway for longevity?
I feel like you're giving me the hard questions, Jessica.
You're great at it, Andy. You can handle it.
That's why I have you guys as in the collective to raise me up too. Um, I think when it comes to longevity, as all of us are getting older, and we got a wide range of ages across even the chronic health collective coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and I think what we forget is the joy of being a kid again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I tell people is like, no matter how old you are, you know, you are as young as you think you are,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of people, they get brought up as like, oh, act your age, right? Stop acting like a kid. I'm actually the other way around. Is like, when we were kids, nothing was impossible, right? The
Mhm.
world was an oyster. We dance when we want to, we sing when we want to, we do stupid stuff when we want to,
Yeah.
right? And we learn from those mistakes. Some of them are mistakes, some of them help us grow, right? So, for me, it's like, when I tell people embrace their joy, it's like, just let that little child out. Like, what would you do if little Jessica hear the song, you break out into dance, or you're just going to sit
Mhm.
there and just sort of jog your head to try to act your age. Just no, it's like
Mhm.
if I hear an '80s song, Michael Jackson, I'm gonna do my two left foot dance. I dance, Minna would tell you that. I sort of just do tapping back and forth, but that's my
Mhm.
happy dance, right? But I think a lot of people is like, try to remember that joy back, because it's really hard to plan ahead. What do you want in life if
Mhm.
you don't remember how happy you are when you're younger, right? Because as we get
Yeah.
older, a lot of us are forgetting what joy is, right? We got too much work, our relationships are, like the bills are too high, right? But sometimes it's just sit back. Being joyful is very easy, right? I could be playing my cat and I'll be happy, right? And all of a sudden everything shifts in just that point, right? Once you're happier, your vibrations go to a different level, and your whole mood and prospect of life is very different.
Yeah. I would love for you to expand on that in when have you seen that sort of, Andy, in working with clients, when have you seen that take place? Or like, can you share with us without all the details when you've seen a client experience sort of that shift from like, I'm going through the motions, I'm doing the things to like, they showed up differently. I could see the joy transition in them. Do you have any anything you can share practically of like they were doing this thing and when I saw the shift in energy or joy, they were able to do this thing differently? Where does it show up? Like, is there in their movement or in their, the ease and flow that they're be able to participate in like a type of routine in their daily life? Or when you work with a client, where's the most common place it shows up, I guess? Something along that line.
Yeah, I'll share a couple of stories that I've been getting from some clients, and it's really funny because a lot of us are going to high school reunions or 10-year, 40 anniversary, 50 anniversary, and stuff like that. And a few of my clients came back and said, Andy, I said, what? He's like, you cannot believe the compliments I get from my friends' wives. Right. I think, what are you talking about? He's like, how do you look so young? You're so darn fit. Look at my husband. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
he's like, I don't realize how I look because I look at myself every day. I'm working out with you. I'm doing some changes and I see very minor changes. I feel good. But
Yeah.
more you start going into your peers, and now there's a
Mhm.
comparison, and it's like Andy, it's like everything I am today is because of you, and that really touches my heart because
Yeah.
it is really something that you don't see it until someone
Mhm.
tells you, right? And I think that's the biggest thing for us is like we're always looking in the mirror. We're saying, well, is this working? Or if you're a gym rat, well, am I lifting 30 pounds and then 25 pounds, right? Meanwhile, your friend can only maybe do lift 5 pounds. You don't know that, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, that outside perspective from someone looking from the outside in makes a big difference. That's one example. Another example is when the parents outdance their kids or outperformance their kids in
Mhm.
exercise. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I
Yeah.
never hear the end of it when they're 20, 30 years older than their kids. And I did a plank longer than my kid by 2 minutes. I was like, wow,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
No, that's huge. Yeah. Great. I love those stories. And I think that that does speak to the longevity piece. Yeah, we tend to have a generic mindset and
Mhm.
framework that as we get older, things are going to decline. That's the messaging that keeps coming. So the joy of I'm not a statistic, I
Yeah.
think is a very powerful piece of things, that there's this expectation of what statistically am going to look like, sound like, and feel like, and you have evidence that it's different. Awesome. So Kelly, in your work, and I know we are experiencing half of the Fearless Generations coaching team here, so I'm gonna let you speak on behalf of both you and your mom and the clients you serve. Why do you think women, or I mean, I think that you serve any clients, but I think this is especially true for women. Why do you think they struggle to fully experience joy, and how do you see that showing up in the coaching that you all do?
Yeah, I think that um, we might hold back from feeling complete joy is because we're always afraid that it's going to leave,
Mhm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that will we be able to handle it if it goes away? Like if we don't feel it in its entirety, then it won't hurt as bad when it's gone, right? It's that
Yeah,
that
so
can
good.
I keep it going consistently?
Yeah.
Um, and I think, I mean, Terry is an excellent example of being young at heart, or you know, whatever, you know, like how Andy was saying, she always says how she's stronger than me, she can walk longer than me, she can do it all more than me. I don't know if it's actually true, but I mean, she's said it so much that I believe it. So um I think it is, a lot of it is in our mindset and
Mhm.
also expectations. I think we can get lost in our expectations of ourselves or of others, and that can steal our joy, um, and help us, or you know, make it
Mm-hmm.
so it's harder to feel it because the moment wasn't perfect, or this person didn't say this thing, or this didn't happen, or only, you know, we only got half the way than what we said we were going to do. And so it kind of like steals our joy because we're putting, you know, parameters or expectations, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, whatever it might be around our ability to feel the joy. You know, I think also you said earlier about guilt. I think also when others around us have things going on, things that are hard, or things that, you know, are challenging them, we feel like we can't then be joyful because they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know I've been guilty of that. Well, talking about guilty, I know I've done that where, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm talking about something frivolous and fun, and then my friend is like, "Oh my gosh, this is what's going on with me," and I'm like, I was just talking about this silly thing, and she's got all of this serious stuff going on. I'm such a bad friend. And she comes back and she's like, "No, I want to hear about your joy. I want to hear about your, you know, your frivolous, funny, you know, silly things because that helps me." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Shift your mindset, Kelly. Shift your mindset. When you can experience joy, it actually helps others to
Mhm.
experience joy. When you can see, you know, all of the little blessings or little, you know, rays of sunshine, it helps others to see that too. And so embracing our joy more fully actually helps the people around us. And I think that that
Mm-hmm.
helps, that shift in perception helps us to more fully be able to step into the joy and really embrace more of it.
I love that. I know that you all use 12 steps in your coaching framework. Is there a particular time in those steps that, because I believe it's repeatable, but is you can clarify, is there a particular time in there where you either focus on joy or you see a transition that this particular step usually always sort of unlocks the clients being able to live in that joy more or have the permission to express it differently than they might have, and what does that look like from a client perspective, like, oh, we see when there's this barrier or this thing that they address or work through, that joy is like it just pops out.
Yeah. I I'm trying to think through the steps and see which one. I mean, cuz joy can come in any
Yeah.
of the steps, right? But I think that step 6, present moment, Getting someone to really focus on being present with their lives in the moment that things are happening, is a place where joy can really step in. Because when you're worrying about the past or you're worrying about the future, you're not in that present moment. And so being able to get present, to live those moments, those little
Mm-hmm.
moments that happen all the time that we can easily miss when we're distracted by this or that. I think that the joy can really come, and I know that is true for me for sure. But there's other steps that it comes in different ways, like surrender. Letting go of these past mistakes, like we've been talking about. Letting go of limiting beliefs can really bring joy into your life, because it's like that weight of the past
Mm-hmm.
has fallen away.
Mm-hmm.
Stepping into passion, trusting yourself. I mean, all of these things can bring joy, but I think if you're going in order, the one that comes to mind the most is present moment.
I love that. And would you review for our audience real quick sort of what the 12 steps are in case they're unfamiliar? No
Now
pressure.
you're working my memory now. So it's awareness, willingness, connection, compassion, accountability, present moment, surrender, intention, possibility. Ah, crap. Um, Trust. I'm missing one, but trust, passion, and love.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that. No pressure at all.
Yeah.
But by the way, if you're watching us, this is a complete unprepared, un prompted conversation here. So you get all the coaches in their realness. I love that. I think for me and the clients that I see and kind of this perspective of joy is that joy can feel really unsafe.
Mhm.
And so, what I always let clients know is I function from this framework of the energetic scale of emotions. And if you're familiar with that, you kind of know the framework I'm talking about. But if you're not, it's referenced in Dr. Joe Dispenza mentions it, Frederick Dodson, David Dawkins. There's a lot of context about these heavier emotions that we carry and the stories that go with them weigh our nervous system down. So, fear, grief, anxiety, shame, guilt, hatred, all of those heavy emotions hold us down like a weighted balloon. And joy is actually a higher level on the scale emotion. And so, until we're willing to release some of those heavier emotions, our nervous system doesn't have the capacity to actually experience joy for long periods of time. It can feel really unsafe. There's this concept that energetically, internally, our nervous system sort of feels something that when we're in a trauma healing or when we're still working through something difficult, we equate that with fear. But that nervous system feeling can also be on the converse side, a feeling of excitement and joy. Attached to it differently is the story that we're telling ourselves. So sometimes when an individual is walking through trauma healing and walking through this perspective of, I feel this feeling, and this old story would have said, this is trauma, this is unsafe, I can't experience this in my body. But as we begin our healing journey, we feel this like butterflies, activation, whatever you want to call it, heart beating a little faster, flip flops in your stomach kind of feeling. And that can also be joy. What I find that the biggest barrier is oftentimes in fully experiencing joy is releasing grief.
Mhm.
When we're holding so much heavy sadness about the losses that we've experienced. And a lot of people don't think about loss beyond death loss. And I think when we give ourselves permission to think through some of both of the things that you've talked about with your clients of, like, hey, I lost the mobility to even get out of bed today.
Mhm.
Like, that's still a loss.
Yes.
And until we can take a perspective where we can acknowledge that, or I lost out on being a good friend sometimes, even because I have so much joy or I'm experiencing good things, but they're heavy. I should be with them, right? And so diminishing our own stuff. And when we are unwilling to look at our life and our timeline and think about where have I lost out on experiences, activities, connections, resources, and we don't allow ourselves to acknowledge it and release it, that is just sort of like another rock that's holding the balloon down. And so giving intention to saying, hey, I am going to intentionally release the sadness or the grief that is holding me present, in holding me down, then when I participate in releasing that grief, it gives my nervous system the capacity to hold the higher emotion, which is joy. And so practically speaking, I tell clients, like, write it out, talk it out, or move it out are the three best strategies to help release the unresolved communication we have around loss. If you don't like writing, you can take out your phone, you have a voice memo, click voice memo and record what you're thinking, feeling, or believing about this loss. Getting that words out of our nervous system gives our system the opportunity to expand into joy, and we don't have the guilt because we've let go of the communication. So hopefully these techniques were helpful to you when it comes to joy. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we do, we will be back to explore more on what expansion looks like.
I love that, Jessica. And I just wanted to quickly share, when we lost our little fur baby, you helped me, Minna, tremendously about writing out, speaking it out. And that's not something that we did. And that helped tremendously. So, like I
Yeah.
said, we are always learning from you all. But yeah, I just want to give a little plug of what you all help us do in our lives. But we'll be right back.
Have you encountered a situation or an event in your life that's caused you to feel stuck? You were on a journey to live your best life, but thoughts and feelings from the past keep showing up and has caused you to feel like you're not headed in the right direction or being the best version of you. Meet Jessica Hammock, trauma recovery and transformation coach. Not only will she teach you about emotional and mental health, she's here to help you unwind the treasure of who you are from the trauma of your past so that you can walk in the truth of your identity and break free from what is holding you back so you're able to nurture the best version of who you're meant to be. The time is now. Let's get started.
Why do 98% of beauty enthusiasts rave about coolness? It's all in the blend of ancient wisdom and modern science. Introducing Coolness, Pearlescent Face and Eye Serum Cream. This powerhouse combines the antioxidative power of schisandra berries, the glow of pearl powder, and the hydrating wonders of dragon's blood extract. It's like a time machine for your skin, making it radiant, firm, and oh so smooth. Inspired by ancient Chinese traditions and backed by modern nutritional science, this serum cream is perfect for dry, mature, and aging skin. It's time to unlock your inner glow with Coolness. Treat your skin to the best of both worlds today.
All right, so we are back now, focusing on our last concept of what this month has brought for us, talking about bloom, joy, but lastly, sort of focusing on this idea of expansion. When you think about an individual or their journey, when you think about their vision and their identity and expanding into next steps, what does expansion look like for you in this season of your life? So Kelly, I'm going to let you start. What does expansion look like for you, and also maybe expansion in your business? Talk to us about that.
Well, for me, expansion right now is I'm going back to school. So
Oh.
with I have two businesses. So I have Fearless Generations, and that's how I show up here in the collective. But I also have a virtual assisting business, and I help other entrepreneurs, find joy and bloom in their business so that they can have that expansion as well. And I'm getting more and more clients. And so I decided to go back and get my AA in marketing so that I can help my clients even more, as well as myself and mine and Terry's business. So that is the big thing that's coming
Mm-hmm.
with expansion, because I have been out of like actual school for a very long time. And I have to do math again, so it's gonna be interesting. It's definitely out of my comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
and so that is a huge expansion coming. But Terry and I just continue to keep stepping one foot in front of the other with our retreats. This is our third retreat is coming up this year, and we just keep up leveling. And I think that's with anything, it's just up leveling one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Learning from the last time you did something, and how can you make it a little bit better. And I think when we talk about expansion, the first thing I think of is our comfort zone, and
Mm-hmm.
expanding that comfort zone to um, include things that right now don't feel very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And what is really far in our vision eventually comes closer, so that then even things that we couldn't see before are now in our vision. And so we use a tool called stretch risk die, and I believe we've talked about it before. But so those dies are those scary things, right? Those big ideas, those elephants that we've been talking about, right? And as we do those little stretches, right, those little baby steps, it continually expands our comfort zone, so that those risks are now stretches, those dies are now risks, and as it continues to grow,
Mm-hmm.
those once dies are now things we're doing, and those new dies are things that we never even came to our mind,
Yeah.
because they were so far out, so far away. So when I think of expansion, I think about that. I think about stretching open that comfort zone to encompass all of those new things that we're trying, those new ways we're blooming, those new ways we're finding joy, those new ways that we're stepping out and taking action, so that all of the things we want to be doing are in our comfort zone.
I love that. All that I can think of, though, as you explain that, is that little movie scene. And I don't know the movie, but I know it's into like this little GIF thing right now. And it's like, but did you die? And they're like, yes, but it was terrible and I was falling apart. And the guy's like, but did you die? And it's a good point to come back to. Sometimes the uncomfortableness that you talked about will happen with expansion. And I think so many people have this preconceived idea that I'm just going to bloom and expand my reach and it's going to be amazing all the time. And there's this uncomfortable piece that can come with expansion and also open new territories. I don't know if anybody on the call plays these little games on their phone. I mean, not that I have any experience, but what I've heard is wink, wink, nod, nod, is that when you unlock a new area, expands what you can do, right? But there's still some building, some growing, some achieving that happens with the expansion. And we're stuck in the same mindset of like, this was hard. I thought it was going to be so different. And then along comes this voice is like, but did you die? We want to be stuck in the hardness of it. And I think it's important to acknowledge, yes, this is hard and difficult, but no, I did not die. I lived through it. So I love that so much. So Andy, thinking about you and longevity, like we're really focusing on not dying, right? But beyond that, what does expansion? I know you have some new things that have really been expanding for you in your life. So talk to us about what expansion looks like in this season for you in your life. Oh, you're muted. At least I can't hear you.
I can't hear you either.
Sorry about that. I was saying I love what Kelly said with her stretch wrist thigh. I interviewed her on that. I listened to her teach that lesson. And that is so relevant because in these last 6 years, a lot of things that I thought was die has now, has become a stretch, right?
Yeah.
And 6 years ago, one of the things that I really wanted to expand is like, I put a vision out there. I said, I want to help 2 million people around the world be more awareness of
Mhm.
how to live a chronically healthy life, not just about the health side, but everything, just to have
Mhm.
everything healthy. And I knew I couldn't do that myself.
Yeah.
And here I am, we're in our fifth season or second season of Chronic Health Collective. And you all have helped me make a die come to a risk. And that was a stretch. We're reaching so many people, and so many people are just following, and it's great because before I thought expansion means I had to do everything myself, right?
Mhm.
And now
Totally.
it's like, working with the people that resonates with other people, we're still reaching out to them. And to me, that is expansion, like to another
Yeah.
level, right? Uh, but like as serial entrepreneurs, all of us have multiple businesses. Yes, Jessica. So recently I have a brick and mortar store again, and the last
Mhm.
time I had a brick and mortar store was when I was 30. So 25 years not sitting in a brick and mortar store, greeting people coming through the door. It's quite a difference.
Mhm.
I'm an introvert. I love talking to people, but it's a very different situation when you're sitting in front of a storefront again. So, uh, but it's exciting because we are now expanding with tools that I've
Mhm.
been using, not necessarily in secret, but what me and Min has been using at home for the last 10, 12 years. And now I'm sort of excited that I can start sharing these tools with people that want to learn more about it.
I love that so much. Yeah. And you didn't die, Andy. You
No,
showed
not
up.
at all.
You created new pathways for longevity. And I think that's, really important. The expansion. And, uh, when we are expanding this idea of, I think we can get stuck in being our own worst enemy in our head because of where we've come through and what we've gone through before, and the stories that we tell ourselves because of expansion might prohibit us from continuing to expand, because there is this sort of movement growth like constriction that happens in that initial expansion, but what it produces as a result of it, I think, is so powerful. And I think it is a repeatable thing from the same vein of what we're talking about, right? There's an expansion of, I'm not just having one bloom with the joy that comes with seeing one bloom, but I'm having a field of blooms, and a couple blooms in a flower bed, and then a yard of blooms, and then a field of blooms, and it's expansive, the reach that we get to have. And both of you have talked about sort of what that has looked like with going back to school and opening a brick and mortar. Like, there's constriction that comes, but with it opens up this whole new level of everybody else being able to experience the goodness of who you are and what you're doing in your work. And I think that's really powerful for individuals to remember, no matter where you're at in your life's journey or what season you're in and what you're expanding into, that in your season, there's always the opportunity that the reach will grow and people will watch you along the journey. And being as authentic and as transparent as you can is really a powerful reminder that anybody can experience this same expansion, that there's no place along the way that you have too much fear or you're too old or not too sick to go beyond. For me personally, I expanding has looked different in different seasons for sure. And I think one of the biggest things that I would love to say here is, there's a book that I read a really long time ago that really helped me reframe this. It's a book called The Dream Giver, by Bruce Wilkerson. It's a very small allegory, and it talks about this guy having this dream, and he goes through all these obstacles, the family that kind of poo-poos on his idea because they think he's not capable of it, which I think is really powerful for people to know. The people closest to you might not always agree with your expansion, and all these hurdles, and even kind of sacrificing and giving up on the dream. And then one day there's this arrival point at this perceived, in the story, it's like a city, and and it's kind of like, okay, you're here. And the guy's like, well, this looks nothing like the dream I had. This looks nothing like the expansion I envisioned. And they're like, no, there's still some participation that you are doing in this expansion. And so he gets to work on building and creating and doing the thing. And all of a sudden, one day he looks around and he's like, this is the final picture of the vision that I had. And that for me has always been a really powerful reminder that in expansion, it does take some effort. It doesn't just boom and you're there at the expansive point, that there's these little steps along the way. And so for me, when I first started expanding out of a traditional setting into doing more business and coaching and some of those things, I really didn't have a clear picture of what it has looked like. But my expansion recently is doing more speaking engagements in a very intentional way. Kelly mentioned one of the big travels she has coming up in October. I was able to speak in the same stage program that her and her mom were MCs for 1 year. I was able to speak on that platform. Myself, I would not have imagined myself as a keynote speaker on a platform with 450 women in a room. So there was a level of expansiveness that came with that. But now it's kind of lit this fire into me of like, what kind of stages can I be on? What size is available to me to be on where transformation can occur in just a short amount of time that people can experience transformation? And also being more intentional in my expansive phase, recognizing that my capacity and energy is going to look different in expansion. And both of you sort of didn't say that, but you brought up conceptually that piece that's there. Kelly has the coaching business. She has this VA business. She's going back to school. So her capacity, and she has a family. She has a lot of children, right? They have a lot of activities going on. She travels, all the things, right? So being really intentional to monitor your capacity and your energy and your output during these expansive seasons can really facilitate the expansiveness and the growth in a way that doesn't arrive at a place where you're like, forget it, burn it all down, I'm done with it, right? And the same is true with Andy, opening a brick and mortar, a different stage in life, a lot more going on, but you have to protect your capacity. Here's how my schedule shifted. Here's when I'm available to do X, Y, and Z because I've now devoted more time to this. And the same is true for me. I'm a mom of a 4-year-old who requires a lot of capacity participation in things and working in a school system during the days and having my coaching business and speaking. So for me, it's being really intentional to decide in this season of expansion, what am I choosing to put my energy in? And will it continue to align in the place that I'm expanding to? Our nervous system, our ability to regulate, our ability to continue to participate in moving towards longevity, to showing up fearlessly, all of those things speak to us expanding when we're intentional. And so I would just say, as a final kind of rapid fire, we sort of have like a few minutes left. If you could give the audience anything, what is one thing you would want them to release in this season? Whether they're blooming, whether they have experiencing joy, or they're expanding, what is one thing you want them to release?
I'm going first because I know I will not be able to follow after Kelly's answer. I would say release self doubt. I think a lot of us have so much self doubt what we are capable of doing, and we are capable of doing so much more than what we limit ourselves do. And to
Mm-hmm.
stop listening to what others say you can or cannot do, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
really what you think about is you bring about, and don't let your limits be limited by others. So that's what I want people to have so they can have as much expansion as they can.
Awesome. Kelly?
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar, Andy. So, I was gonna say release a limiting belief. If even if it's a small one, let go of one of your stories. Figure out what's one of those stories that you're just holding on to, and find some way. Work with someone, get with a
Mm-hmm.
friend, and release at least one of those stories, one of those limiting beliefs that you have, that's holding you back from living the life that you want to live. And if you if you want to talk to me about it, you can always reach out. I have lots of exercises that I can give you to help you with that. And even if it's a tiny shift in your perception around something, it will make a difference.
Yeah. And I would say the treasure of who you are is meant to shine in this world, and it's going to look uniquely different than anybody else. So allow yourself to release those trauma things. And finally, I want you to know that if you have not heard it in this episode, that you're seen, you're not alone, healing is possible, joy is available, and you get permission to expand into more. And there's tools and strategies and coaches available to support you no matter what that looks like. So thank you for joining us in today's panel, and hopefully you found something that can carry you into your next season.
I love that so much. So if today's episode spoke to you all, don't just watch, make sure you take action. Book your free consult with one of the 11 coaches at chronichealthcollective.com and for personal support. And remember to subscribe to our monthly magazine where each of us are always writing an article to help elevate your life in every aspect. Join us here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. CST or catch past episodes anytime on E360TV.com, on the Vitality TV network, or YouTube.com at Chronic Health Collective. Thanks for tuning in. The transformation starts now. See you all next week.